for?
You don't have any evidence for it?
Oh, yes, I do.
Be proud of what you do in life, and be proud of what your body does in death. If that's not good enough for you, then go worship something.
Which it sounds to me like, at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me that you're into self-worship. You worship yourself. You consider yourself ultimately worthy.
Well, what about the things that you improve upon your death? What if you're worshiping them? Is it wrong to worship the flower? Is it wrong to worship a tree, some animal that eats it later?
I agree that moral relativism is not the key to morality, but I disagree that moral relativism is the only alternative to a leap of faith in a certain set of principles. I think that the most significant message that comes with a spreading of religion is not believe in this religion or believe in this faith, but so much believe in something. Believe. I think that the best thing that a person can learn from any religion is the idea of religion in general, not the idea of any religion specifically. Because basically, the religions, various world religions, have different approaches, different explanations, different models for these same types of what we call absolute morals. Yet they have totally different takes, totally different methods of faith, and totally different explanations. The model itself is not what's important, it's the message that the model brings.
Well, yeah, but sir, I was not responding to someone who believed in religion. I was responding to a gentleman who's very articulate, who stated that we're just monkeys. So therefore, I'm taking you seriously, and you're the one who said we're just monkeys, and I'm trying to point out that if that's true, if we are just monkeys, then life is meaningless, morality is relative, and death is the end.
No, that's the point I disagree on, because I think that it's possible that a god of what we might call a god, but really in no way fits our conception of what we would think of as a god, could create, let's say there were a world without humans, just lots and lots of monkeys. Sure, we wouldn't be here to have the capacity to know that such a world exists, but we can conceive of the idea that a world would exist with a god and lots of monkeys with no humans.
Yeah.
So essentially, if we're all just monkeys, that's not mutually exclusive with moral absolutism. Us being monkeys does not
you're right.
generate moral relativism.
Good. I assume that when you said we're just monkeys, what you meant by that is there is no God. Evolution as an origin is correct. We have just simply evolved by chance and by fate. So did I misunderstand you?
Well, it's not in a way, but not in an unacceptable way at all, because I think that misunderstanding is representative of a much greater understanding that's championed by Christianity in general, which is that not so much current Christianity, but the idea of evolution, as being the cause of this. Why, when evolution was discovered, the Catholic Church went up in arms, and they were really, really upset at the idea of evolution. But to me, a more rational, more functional institution would have said, great, evolution, God created that too.
So tell me, do you believe there's a God who's creator or not?
I personally do believe that there is a creator. However, I don't believe that he mirrors any of the major religions' conceptions of that creator.
Fair enough. So you're not atheist, you're not even agnostic. You're a theist.
Yeah.
You believe that some type of God or gods exist. Okay, now, who is this God like? Or what is this God like? Or how do you gain information about what this God is like?
Well, I personally have my own hunches and intuitions, but my more significant sense says it doesn't matter. I think that moral relativism is not mutually exclusive with faith. There is moral absolutism that is inherent within the physical world.
Okay,
You said it yourself when you discussed your central nervous system and the pleasure that it seeks.
Yes.
Really, a moral absolutist approach is I'm going to act in such a way that as best as possible maximizes the sensations on as many central nervous systems as possible. I do not need a God as part of my conception of religion to acknowledge that when I'm going to, if I'm going to beat a child, that I am drawing pain upon their, central nervous system. I realize, I don't need a God. I don't need a threat of looming punishment to recognize that if my goal is to maximize earthly existence, to, I guess you could, what you call maximizing pleasure in my central nervous system, I don't need, you know what I'm saying? Humans don't need God in order to make that leap. The leap is not from earth to heaven. The leap is from earth to earth.
Okay, but the only way that a human being can have dignity innately is if they've been created for a purpose. Because if they've not been created for a purpose, if our number simply came up in a Monte Carlo game by accident, then to argue that we have innate dignity is a joke.
I disagree, because let's say, you win the lottery. Lots of people who win the lottery are going to say, okay, I'm going to buy myself a car, I'm going to buy myself a house in Tahiti. Whereas some people might, and they're going to become frivolous with the money and basically disengage themselves with the value because it is immediately accessible to them. That they say, because I didn't work for this money, I can spend it frivolously and not think twice about it. But the fact is, there is a value associated with that money. That money can can bring about a certain amount of good. You can actually sustain yourself and your family for however much time. That basically, even if our number did come up in a Monte Carlo game, and this is how it is, that's not mutually exclusive with us living morally.
All right, what do you have to say to me? Stealing your money will help me a lot, because I need some money to go on my next vacation. Therefore, I'm going to steal your money because it's going to maximize my pleasure. What do you have to say to me?
Well, if I were the type of person who had enough money that I would not notice the difference, that the difference would not really damage my central nervous system, then in principle, no, there's really not so much of a problem with that. I think that, it's okay if the rich get stolen from here and there. Now, I don't want to say steal as a general principle, because then people are going to go around stealing from people who really do need to feed themselves.
Who determines who needs it?
What's that?
Who determines who needs it?
Well, I think that you can determine whether or not you need it.
Okay,
I think that you
well,
can tell the difference between a starving person
I
and a
need
well-fed
money
person.
more than you do. Can I have it? All right. Seriously, I just lost my keys. I need $125.
I don't have $125, but I got $5 and I got $6.
There's a 10 right there, too.
Well, I don't want to keep my $2.
I'm saying that you cannot define the line. I'm saying that you cannot define the line with your religion and your God. I just don't think you're all asking to draw a line, and I don't see where one.
Okay, so you're more relative.
I don't know. I suppose so. I think that what I was thinking earlier while you guys were talking about that is that you're right. I don't think that moral relativism on the extreme can work, but I also don't believe that moral extremism can work. You cannot have a set of morals.
That's right.
Because you won't. How can you have a set of morals?
I think you just put your finger on the real issue for the majority of my moral relativist friends. You're scared that if there are some moral absolutes, it's going to mean that some right-wing fundamentalist Christian group is going to try and legislate their morality in the United States.
Okay.
And you're scared spitless of seeing that happen. Well, guess what? So am I. But just because you and I are scared spitless of some right-wing, hyper-conservative, fundamentalist Christian group legislating all of their morality all over us, that does not mean that we are justified rationally in flipping off to the other side of the spectrum and saying, it's all relative. No. Come on, guys. Use the conscience, the rational mind God has given you. Realize that there aren't a lot of moral absolutes, but there are at least a few.
Okay, who defines those?
Exactly. Now, I'm not going to get specific and tell you what they are.
Okay.
But what I heard you just say to me is, fine. That was the first word you said. Now, when you told me fine, what that communicates to me is, yeah, Cliff, I think there are a few, maybe not many, but a few moral absolutes. We know that there are some moral absolutes, which means there's got to be some mind prior to the human mind that creates and defines these moral absolutes.
Okay, well, this goes back to your monkey discussion with him, where you said that the reason that, I guess you could call it mind worshippers or self-worshippers or whatever,
Yes.
and I think I fall under that category for what it's worth. The reason that the mind cannot be worshipped is because it cannot possibly encompass our universe, our creation, everything. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
That's part of it.
Okay. Well, show me that God is more than the creation of the human mind.
You bet.
Okay. This is great.
One of the reasons that I'm convinced that you have a rational mind is because of how well you articulate. I've never seen your mind, I've never smelled your mind, I've never put your mind in a test tube. But I am convinced that between your two beautiful ears lies a rational mind. Why? Because the evidence of your articulate speech points me to a rational mind.
Okay.
In the same way, I've never seen God, smelled God, or put God in a test tube. But the order and design of the human eye, central nervous system, quote, laws of nature, the fact that if our Earth was a little closer to the sun, we'd all fry. If our Earth was a little further from the sun, we'd all freeze. The evidence of the amount of information in a single cell's DNA, which exceeds the amount of information in 3 sets of the 30-volume Encyclopedia Britannica. That kind of densely packed information demands some type of creator, some type of mind.
Okay. Well, in response to that, I say, first of all, that in my personal case, science is the answer to that. And using yourself for an example, using the DNA for an example.
You know?
You say DNA has all, that's absolutely true. But the fact is that of our DNA, 2%, 3% of it is valid and used. The rest of it has been discarded through evolution. Sorry, like I'm a biology major.
Yeah, so what?
So it's not all valid information.
Yeah, but the amount of information that is there in DNA.
Okay, but it's been developed
incredible.
through a process. So it's can be explained.
The fact,
Wait a second.
Yeah, the fact the process.
The process, yes, agreed upon. But then the question is it more plausible to believe that behind that process of such densely packed information, there's an intelligent mind? Or is it more plausible to believe that that kind of communication comes about with no intelligent mind?
So you're going for just simplest explanation.
I'm going for the explanation that is most plausible in light of the evidence. Give me a quick illustration. You and I are walking down the beach. We're walking down the beach, and we see ripples in the sand. And we say, there, look what the waves did. But if you and I are walking down the beach and we come across John loves Mary, we don't conclude, wow, look what the ocean did, the waves. Why? That kind of cogent information demands an intelligent mind.
See, I don't see where God has gone one step further. I don't see where the consciousness has been demonstrated. And maybe that sounds ridiculous because of the formation of human intelligence and whatever intelligence. But I don't see that our intelligence is such a great step ahead of everything else that's been created. And I don't see that creation is such a great step ahead of what science can predict.
Okay, good. My brother's a transplant surgeon at University of Wisconsin. The amount of study that he's had to go through to be a transplant surgeon, the amount of study he's had to do to learn how to transplant kidneys and livers, the amount of study he's having to do on the human body to learn genetically how to help the human body not reject the new organ, points to a level of intricacy in the human body that's amazing. Now, is it more plausible to say that kind of order and design is a result of chance? Or is it more plausible to say that kind of order and design comes from some type of intelligent mind?
I find that God is theoretically omniscient, right? And theoretically omnipotent, and theoretically omnipresent, correct? And if all of these are true, then he is pervasive. He understands all the motives of every living creature on earth, and he understands us at our most rudimentary level. So if this is the case, how can a being that is all of this, anything that we can possibly conceive of, possibly choose to do anything? If one has complete understanding of everything, how can one possibly have any biases or any opinions of any sort? Wouldn't one just simply be? Therefore, God is simply a presence that is, and not a presence that loves or hates or anything else. It just simply is and permeates the cosmos.
I don't understand how knowledge excludes free will. I don't understand why an all-powerful God could not choose to partially limit his power by creating us free. I do not understand why an all-powerful God could not choose to partially limit his power by becoming a human being in Jesus Christ. So why can't an all-knowing, all-powerful God choose to partially limit his power by creating us with a free will?
Because it's an effect like the judgment is rendered obsolete once you have complete knowledge. It's impossible. And so to say, well, I'm going to partially limit my power now that I have free will, it's simply one of those things as you look at maybe the Buddha as another example, not to exclude Jesus because he's a good guy, but we'll look at the Buddha as an example. Once he attained the Buddha realm and then subsequently nirvana, he ceased to really have conscious thought. He simply existed. He simply was, and he didn't reward one action and condemn another. He simply existed. And to see God as anything outside of a consciousness that simply is, I find, is limiting God.
To be very honest with you, I don't have great relationships with forces. It takes a personal being for me to have a relationship with.
But automatically, if it's a personal being, it's automatically cheapened. If it becomes a personal being, then all of a sudden we're addressing something that's omnipotent and completely pervasive as essentially a man. And so to relate something like that and speak of it as if it was a man, because we couldn't help but speak of it in any other light, because it's impossible to, automatically that cheapens the presence. Therefore, I say that by preaching, I respect what you do, but I think the contemplative manner of seeking God and the esoteric path is much more rewarding than simply following codified laws and then finding the truth.
Part of what makes me excited about talking with you is that you're a personal being. Part of what excites me about praying to God is I'm convinced that God is a personal being. I have horrible relationships with the impersonal. I have horrible relationships with it. It takes a personal being for me to have a significant relationship with. That's why I celebrate the fact that Jesus Christ in the scriptures reveal that God is a personal being who actually cares about you and cares about me.
It's a nice thought, and I'd love to believe it, but again, I find that with my limited capacity to try and understand something of infinite capacity and say, well, I'm a finite being and I'm going to converse with an infinite being, it's virtually impossible because I couldn't fathom it in the first place.
Oh, no, come on. Now, wait a second. This whole thing is, in one sense, very simple. Hi, my name's Cliff. What's your name?
Song.
Harry.
Two.
What's your name?
Song.
Thomas? Okay, not only is that incredibly rude, but that is amazingly arrogant of me. His name is not Thomas. His name is not Harry. His man's name is Sung. There is no way that I'm smart enough to figure him out. The only way I'm going to get to know a personal being is if that personal being chooses to open up and reveal to me his name, his character, what he likes, what he dislikes. Oh, by the way, you're an NBA All-Star basketball player, and you hate football, and you love science, and you hate English. That's absurd. He's got to tell me who he is. Otherwise, I'm going to create him in my own image, according to my own likes and dislikes.
What isn't he?
Well, the same thing is true with God. If there is a God, certainly this God's going to have to open up and reveal to me who God is, what God is like, because I certainly am not smart enough to figure out God. But if God does open up and reveal to me who he is, I better have the humility to accept that revelation and not look him in the face and say, oh no, you're not that way, you're this way. Therefore, that would be just as arrogant as for me to say, Harry, good to meet you. No, he's not Harry, he's Sung. And if I'm going to know him, I got to have the humility to allow him to be Sung. And if I'm going to know God, I better have the humility to allow God to be God.
Well,
okay, well, what about being open to the possibility that Jesus defined God accurately?
I wish I was open to that, but I can't. See, then we have to define terms. Jesus says, essentially, paraphrasing, God is love, etc., etc. Well, what is love? Something that can only be experienced and not talked about, etc., etc. So, again, I have a hard time with the definition of terms, etc., etc.
Oh, okay, wait a second. When the Bible says that God is love, it is not saying that love is God. Reading in context, it becomes real clear that when the Bible says God is love, it is not saying love is God. It is saying that God is a personal being who actually loves. That love is part of God's character, that love emanates from Him towards you and towards me, towards all of us. Now the question is, how are we going to respond to that love?
Well, I don't know, I guess simply by channeling it through yourself, once it's channeled to you. Speaking in this context, so.
Okay. If He's part of God and if I'm part of God, and I haul back, smack Him in the face, what just happened?
Yourself.
Part of God just hit part of God. Therefore, there is no basis for justice, no basis for ethics, for right and wrong. Because everything simply is, and everything that is part of God. Well, that's monism, a definite worldview. Gandhi got his understanding that the caste system was wrong, not from the Vedas and Upanishads, which teach monism. He got it from the Sermon on the Mount, where we realized that God is the creator. He created this man with dignity, and He gave me this hand not to smack him, but to love and respect him. And if I use this hand to smack him, that's evil. And it's not part of God hitting part of God. It's one creature created with a free will hitting another creature, and I'm going to be held responsible by the Creator for abusing this hand, rolling it into a fist, and sending it into his handsome face.
But the integral part of Gandhi's perspective also was that you don't need to seek God because the kingdom of God is within you. And so all that is outside of you is also inside of you. And so, I mean, from Tolstoy. So he also understood this, and therefore, that was the integral part that really made Gandhi Gandhi, in my opinion. So, that you don't need to seek God out here because God is already in here. And whatever is out there is in here.
What do you mean when you say whatever's out there is automatically in here?
Well, when I said that God is pervasive, God is this, God is love, God is purified, rarefied consciousness, kingdom of God is within you as well. That inner knowledge of right and wrong is within you as well. So that's...
Okay, but that's where Jesus disagrees. Jesus did not teach that consciousness is God. Rather, the Bible and Jesus teach that our consciousness is a gift from God. It's part of our life, which is a wonderful gift from God. But consciousness is not God. I mean, I have my own consciousness. I'm an individual, created in the likeness of God, in the image of God. But I am not God, and my consciousness is not God. God is a separate being who I can either choose to live in relationship with, or I can choose to live out of relationship with.
You are not God per se, but God is within you. That's all. And so I know with a lot of petty Christian preachers, they try and convince you that you are an empty, hollow, sinful, nasty wretch, and that you need to seek out here to really gain any type of worthwhile character. And the truth thing is, the essence is within you. And
oh, well, about those sinful, horrible wretches you were referring to, I'm well aware of the fact that none of us fit that category, right?
well,
I mean, we are all outstanding people, aren't we?
One of my biggest problems is the concept of original sin. I'm not saying that, of course we're all with sin if we're talking in that context of Christianity. But I think this concept of original sin is a real problem I have, because everyone's held an infant in their hands. And you look at the infant and you say, wow, you know, some versions of Christianity teach me that this is a being that is sinful and that needs to be redeemed throughout his life. And that nauseates me, because it's not true. It's not true. This is a being that's pure and innocent and without sin, and sin is garnered later through life experience.
Okay, fine. And that's what the Bible teaches. I think you've just summarized that real well.
But to say that every human being is born into sin, I find is just, that's a fallacy. It's terrible, and it's not true.
Well, all that means is that all of us are born scarred.
Scarred?
Yeah,
I came
scarred.
out pretty clean after they told me off. I didn't have anything wrong with me. I was pure and innocent as a being.
Okay, great.
I can't be held accountable.
You're
for
pure and
what I did.
innocent as a child. At age 3,
Age 3?
4, 5, 6?
Well, I think sin probably comes in as we'll define sin with the age of reason itself. So once you can actually judge for yourself, then you start sinning, quote unquote. So
Have you ever worked with 3-year-olds?
5-year-olds.
Good. Then if you've worked with 5-year-olds, I think you're in a good position to answer the question, is the Bible accurate in pointing out that all of us human beings struggle with sin? Did you ever meet a perfect 5-year-old? Neither have I. Rousseau clearly taught that children are born perfect, pure, pristine. The only problem is Rousseau had his nanny dump 5 of his little kids on the hospital steps in Paris. He disowned 5 of these perfectly pristine, pure little kids. Rousseau found out that his thinking wasn't in touch with reality. There's no perfect kid. There's no perfect, pristine human being. All of us do good at times, but the clear evidence is all of us can be incredibly selfish, including my wonderful 10-year-old boy. Now, don't any of you would say anything negative about my 10-year-old. He's the greatest kid on this planet. But allow me the privilege of telling you that my 10-year-old is a sinner.
Is going toward entropy, but there are brief spin-offs where it forms organization. And I use the analogy of tossing a bunch of rubber balls up a flight of stairs. At the end, they're all going to bounce up, but they're all going to bounce back down. At the end, they're all going to bounce back down because that's where they're going. But in the course of their path down, some of those balls are going to accidentally bounce up a couple of stairs. And that's the same thing that's going on in the universe. The world, it becomes organized for these brief little periods, like the world, like life itself, and like all of the organization of like the quantum physics down to elements that we understand. That's just a brief trip on the big scale. That's just a brief spin-off. It doesn't go outside of any kind of logical progression to say that sure, intelligence does come up. Sure, out of all these billions of stars, a planet does happen to form with life on it. That's going to happen given this expanse of entropy, but it is all going to entropy. It is all going to chaos. So I understand, I can't argue the moral. You know, if you say that there is some kind of universal moral that guides us, I have no explanation for that. That's everybody's opinion. But to use the logic of, well, you know, intelligent life means that there has to be some mind behind it, I would disagree with that. And as an atheist and as a biologist, that's one of the things that turns me away from people who are defending Christianity by saying, well, there has to be faith. There's only faith for me that can define whether you believe in God or not. Because, like you said, the Bible and what you have to go on is not science. They don't conflict each other.
Right.
But you can't use some kind of logical, scientific, pseudo-scientific logical reasoning, such as there has to be a mind behind it. Well, no, there doesn't. Everything that we have, everything that we've given, that we can perceive, is defined by science. Maybe we don't understand it to a certain extent that we would like, but we used to think that the Earth was the center of the universe, and then we figured out, oh, if we use this telescope, that's not true. All right, but God still exists. You know, now it's not a chariot, you know, and the flames of the chariot that makes the sun. Now it's a giant ball of gas. But we can't explain love, so there must be God. No, we just haven't gotten that far yet. And every couple hundred years, there's another thing, and we go, evolution. And, Christians reject evolution because the Bible said this. And then they start to relax and go, okay, yeah, you're right. The Bible isn't scientific. The Bible is something different. So Christians start to adapt, and accept evolution to a certain extent, decide, well, okay, they're separate. But now it's just another thing. Now it's just another, well, we can't define this with science, so I'll define it with God. And I'm just not comfortable doing that. Personally, I'm not, as far as the moral, if you think there's a moral absolute, then that's kind of different. But to use some kind of logical pseudo-scientific, thing. It's just the same thing that people have been doing for hundreds of years, and it didn't work for all of them.
I agree with you. People used to think Zeus on Mount Olympus throws thunderbolts, it's thundering, that's the voice of God. Science discovers that no, thunder is not the voice of God. Therefore, God shrinks because science closes the gap. That has occurred. But, sir, you're not listening to me very closely if you lump me into that stereotype. Because what I am saying is not, there's a gap, let's call it God. What I'm saying is, study science. Look at the irreducible complexity of a single living cell. Darwin pointed out that if you can show me that an organism is irreducibly complex, that means it just couldn't go step by step by step. So what I'm saying is, science showing us irreducible complexity, science showing us the amazing order and design of an eye. Science showing me that kind of complexity drives me to say, it's far more reasonable to believe that behind this complexity, there's an intelligent mind than it is plausible to say, behind this complexity, there's no intelligent mind. That is not a God of the gaps. That is a God who has revealed himself in what Einstein called the slight details that we with our frail minds can observe. It's not a God of the gaps I'm referring to, who shrinks when science increases. Quite the opposite, I'm saying. Look what science has shown us. Your whole idea that, well, you take an infinite amount of time, infinite number of possibilities, you're going to have this happen. Well, what does science tell us today? Does it tell us that we have an infinite amount of time? No, sir. The Big Bang theory clearly shows us we've got about 15 billion years. We don't have an infinite amount of time. So I'm just saying, fine. It's not a God of the gaps. It's a simple issue of looking at the scientific evidence and asking yourself the philosophical, not the pseudo-scientific baloney. The philosophical question, is it more reasonable to believe that behind this type of complexity, there's chance and fate? Or is it more reasonable and plausible to believe that behind this type of complexity, there's some type of intelligent mind?
Why is it necessary that you put an intelligent mind instead of explaining it with chance? And because it can be explained with chance. 15 billion years, you can explain it with chance. Our minds are set to operate on a certain level, of time. We can only understand a certain span of time. We can't understand 15 billion years. Given 15 billion years, statistically, it can happen. Why?
All right, you mentioned statistically. You go and do the statistics. 15 billion years. Non-life to life, single cell to bee to butterfly, butterfly to little boy.
It's been done.
Yeah, it sure has been done. And what have you found? And be honest with me. Statistically, what have you found?
Statistically, the chances that there's another planet elsewhere in the universe, as the best math that we can put together, is 0.9 with a line over it, which is 1, which is 100%. It's nearly 100% that there's actually another planet out there.
Why did you just switch the topic? That's not what we were talking about, another planet out there. We're talking about life right here. The discussion is it by chance or does it demand an intelligent mind? Which is more plausible? Now, you've got 15 billion years. You're arguing, statistically, it can go from non-life, from matter and energy, to life, to single cell, to bee, to butterfly, to boy. And what are the statistics on that happening?
0.999.
No, sir. No.
Well, yeah, exactly, and I can do that, and you can do that if you
10
like
to the what?
You can.
It's something like 1 to 10 to the 55th power, which means, sir, statistically, it's impossible when you've got that kind of thing. Come on, be honest with the statistics. Let's go.
Yeah, we can.
Don't tell me it's 100%. It's not 100%. There's only one way that you can say it's 100%, and that's by saying there's no Big Bang, the universe is eternal, you've got an infinite amount of time, an infinite amount of space. But guess what the problem with that is? The problem with that is there's no way you and I can understand that. Not only that, if that's true, what that means is there's a planet out there with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. There's a planet out there with Buzz Lightyear, right? Yeah, there's Buzz Lightyear's planet out there. Because if there's a small possibility of anything happening, if you take infinity times infinity, then it has to happen. So what you're saying is everything exists. Because I've got infinity times infinity. That's exactly what you're saying.
That's just getting into random intellectual. Well, these are the many scientific possibilities that I think would be fun to talk about, which is something fun to consider. But that's not what I'm talking about.
We were talking
what I'm talking
statistics.
about is the actual statistics of life evolving from nothing. Aren't all that spare.
1 to 10 to the 55th
it's not
power.
Unlikely.
That's what it is statistically. 1 in 10 to the 55th power.
And if you have several
That's impossible.
billion stars, that works out pretty well.
It does?
Out of that many
Well, don't bank your life on that kind of probability.
You know, if you had, if you're playing the lottery, your chances are pretty slim. But if you bought several billion tickets, you're gonna win. It's the same thing. The chances are really slim, but there's billions of stars. You know, we can't even map how far that it goes. I'm just saying that statistically, it is likely, and that scientifically, that is the way that it happened. And I wouldn't feel comfortable. And the reason I originally left Christianity was because people tend to use logical forms of argument to defend them. And I know that you do believe these, and you are very passionate and very intelligent, very well read, and I respect your opinions a lot more than most Christians I've ever heard speak. That's the one point that I feel that falters in my interpretation.
Okay, fine.
Your example.
Then why don't you put your faith in Christ just because you're blown out of your socks by his amazing love for you?
That type of thing is what draws me closer.
Great.
That type of thing in faith is what draws me closer. And
Super.
What draws me further away is using arguments and things. Faith, I have no problem with, and love, I really, really enjoy. But but as far as logical arguments, that's what pushed me away. And I don't like to think that there are people that are listening to that and going, oh, well, that makes sense. Well, scientifically, that's not it. If you're going to find God, you're going to find him through love and faith. You're not going to find him through logical reasoning, is my opinion. But then again, I'm an atheist, so you probably don't want to listen to me about how to find God.
Well, I thought you said you are impressed by the love of Christ.
I'm impressed by love as an emotion.
Yeah, well,
And
Jesus
as
communicated
something exciting
incredible
that we don't
love. He
understand,
sacrificed his life.
Wonderful, that lifts us up where we belong. Like Baz Luhrmann always talks about. That kind of love I do enjoy, and faith in God I really do enjoy. And
Well, why are you an atheist?
because of Christians. Because of I don't mean you, and I feel like a horrible person saying that, but because of the way that it's dealt with and the way it forces things on people and I know you're much better about that than most people I know, but so many people don't put any thought into it. And I think as human beings, we're meant to filter things and to adjust what's right for us.
Sure.
And so many people follow it blindly without they dedicate their lives to something that they haven't even thought about just because it's what their parents believe. And that kind of thing originally pushed me away from it. And when I talk to people, I often say that I may grow up to be a Christian, and it is right and it is love, and I was wrong for rebelling against it for so many years. But all this new intelligence that we're all getting, as college students, growing up, we all rebel against something, and it's one of the things that I rebelled against.
All right.
Fairly violently.
So you're sure that you'll get over this time of rebellion and come back to Christ?
I may.
Great.
I'm not sure. We don't know, but I may. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but on my own terms. I can't do it,
Right. On your own terms. Right, but, think through that issue of, I got so turned off by these Christians that I had to reject Christ. I mean, look at the African American. The African American has forefathers and foremothers who were enslaved by white Christians. And yet the African Americans have had the intellectual objectivity to look at Jesus Christ and not to give a white Christian racist the power to turn them off to the true Jesus Christ. Now that's impressive. I mean, I understand Louis Farrakhan. I understand a black militant. You killed and enslaved my forefathers and foremothers, I'm going to get you for it. It's exactly what went on in Bosnia. It's exactly what's going on in Palestine today. Look at those African Americans who have the intellectual open-mindedness and objectivity to say, I'm not going to allow a white Christian racist to turn me off to the true Jesus, who didn't have a racist bone in his body. So don't you give some narrow-minded Christian the power to turn you off to the true Jesus, who wasn't narrow-minded and taught a narrow way, but he wasn't narrow-minded. He accepted all people.
See, I would argue that that's just, that model is just the way that you're choosing to organize that instance. And that's, you know, I wouldn't say it would have to result in that.
Give me one shred of evidence that there's life after death.
Again.
Okay, if you don't have one shred of evidence that there's life after death, in light of the fact that bodies decompose rather quickly, don't you think we better face reality, which is there ain't no life after death?
Sure.
Okay. Well, if there is no life after death, then don't get sentimentally sloppy on me and say, well, you know, maybe there is life after death. It's a closed case. There is no God. There's no supernatural being. You're dead and gone. But if there is a supernatural God, then it's possible that there's life after death. Now, obviously, that's what Jesus Christ insisted. Jesus promised eternal life to all who trust in him, and then he backed up that promise with an historical resurrection from the dead. That's the basis for hope. That's why I can look this woman in the face and plead with her, if you've not put your faith in Christ, please put your faith in Christ, examine him, trust in him, and receive the gift of eternal life that he promises to all who trust in him. And if she does put her faith in Christ, and I get to perform her funeral as a minister, I'm going to be rejoicing. Not that she died. I mean, it's sad that she died, but I'm going to be rejoicing. You know, I never had the opportunity to get to know her that well in this life, but I'm going to see her again in heaven, and I'm going to have the privilege of getting to know her for eternity. That's hope. That's excitement. That's tremendously positive.
Well, just as a conclusory note, I see what you're saying totally. Just me, myself, not practicing Christianity, you know, I can see how myself, I've chosen to rationalize first and then decide what to put my faith in. And, you know, when it comes to death, I don't see it as just being as cut and dry like that. And yeah, although I don't believe that my personality is gonna, you know, totally subsist and just go to heaven, but I don't see there being a heaven, but I don't see that as being despair. And like that's a product of me rationalizing first and then attempting to put my faith somewhere. And you know, I don't see it as being so black and white like that.
All right, good.
But
then, all right, I'm not attacking you, but I will make a statement that is attacking your line of thinking. All right. My point is, you have just lost your intellectual honesty. When you say death is the end, there's no life after death, but I'm not going to despair. I'm going to act like there's hope. There's something positive out there after death. You have just lost your intellectual honesty. Because if you really believe that death is the end, that there is no life after death, then you can't stand here and say, but I choose to be positive about death, and maybe there is something after death.
well, I can, except it's just when I said no life after death, I'm talking about in the model that you're proposing.
Well, give me another model.
Okay, well, we're just collections of energy
Yeah.
that's, you know, cosmically assembled somehow into this pattern at this point in time.
Yeah.
And when I and my soul, bodily, physical form cease,
Yeah.
because that's the environment, that's what's going on right here.
Right.
You know, my personality, the things that are a product of my brain right now, at this point in time in existence, are going to stop. It's going to be, you know, like a flat line.
Right.
That just gets totally diffused. You know, that energy doesn't disappear. That
Okay.
just diffuses back into like this whole, you know, cosmic assemblage that we're in right now. And so it's not despairing, like it just totally ends, like nothing makes a difference. It just gets reabsorbed back in, and, you know, I don't see that as being despair. It's like a continuous flux.
Sir, I can promise you, I've enjoyed this conversation. When you become energy in the form of fertilizer to fertilize this tree or the flowers, I'm not going to be able to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I agree.
Your unique identity, who you are, will no longer exist. And the thought of you simply being an energy force that helps the tree or the flower grow, that's horrible. I like you, man.
What's wrong with it?
What's wrong with it?
Yeah.
There is a dignity to human life that is so superior to the force in fertilizer, there's no comparison.
During your lifetime, you give hope and you give life to the people around you. You create your world for them. You say hi to them. You make them happy. Why isn't it good enough that when you die, you go on and make something else live? You do the same thing you do in death that you did in life. Isn't that good enough? Why
Fertilizer
is it
is
that you can't be happy
inanimate.
with that?
Not true.
The fertilizer is inanimate. Matter, energy.
Why are you comparing it? Why
You
is
are
it not
animate.
good
You
enough for
are a living being. There is something precious and incredibly valuable about your life.
Yeah, but most of the fertilizer stuff came from things that were living originally too.
Right. And I am convinced that if I step on fertilizer, that's okay. If I step on you, that's not okay. I'm
Where's that?
convinced that you're a human being with a complex of mind, emotions, will. You have a dignity. You have the ability to build relationships with other people.
But you don't know
Fertilizer
that's
does not have that ability.
How do you know? You don't know any of this.
Good. If you can give me some evidence that you have a good relationship with fertilizer, I'd love to hear it.
Do you have any evidence that you have a good relationship with God? You
Sure.
don't have any evidence for it?
Oh,
Don't
yes, I
worry
do.
about it. Be proud of what you do in life and be proud of what your body does in death. If that's not good enough for you, then go worship something.
Which it sounds to me like at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me that you're into self-worship. You worship yourself. You consider yourself ultimately worthy.
Well, what about the things that you improve upon your death? What if you're worshiping them? Is it wrong to worship the flower? Is it wrong to worship a tree, some animal that eats it later?
Yeah, I think that there is solid evidence that God is more reliable, more magnificent than his creation. I think it's wiser to worship the creator rather than the creation. The creation is very fickle. It dies, the flower dies. God is an eternal being who gave you the gift of life, who loves you, who wants you to spend eternity with him in heaven. That's exciting. He's ultimately worthy.
So it's not good enough that in death you give your life on to something else. That's not good enough for you.
Well, if that's reality, if that's all there is, then I'm going to face reality, but that is despair.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, why?
Because there's so much more to life than being fertilizer.
Well, yeah, but that's
And
what
when you
do in
die,
death.
you lose your life
I didn't talk about what
and you
did
become
in life.
fertilizer.
Why is it despair that in death you would help something else?
Well, there's no you. When you die, the you is gone.
Oh, fine. Why is it despair that in death your body would help something else?
Because the thing that's so wonderful about you is you. And at death, there ain't no more you.
Why not?
Because when you investigate fertilizer, you see that there's no mind, no emotions, no ability to communicate. Fertilizer does not have personality.
You're not making any sense here. Why is
I'm
there
not making sense?
Yeah, why is there not a you after you die?
No. I said there's no you in fertilizer. You were upset that I'm concerned that if we're only going to move into fertilizer, that's despair.
I would be proud for something else to live on because I died.
Well, why not get to know the God who gave you this incredible gift of life?
I try.
Good. You obviously didn't generate yourself.
No, not particularly.
Obviously, human beings did not generate human beings in the beginning. So we obviously come from some type of God, creator. Don't you want to get to know God?
I try as best I can, but
Good. What do you
I
think
don't
about
have-
Jesus? He claimed to be God revealing himself?
I don't know him personally.
All right. Don't you think you should check him out and see if it's possible to have a spiritual relationship with him? That's what he claimed you could have.
I do, but I don't have any shame in simply having a dead body when I die, if that's the case.
Okay, I didn't say shame. I said despair.
Okay.
Exactly what Nietzsche, Camus, Sartre, Bertrand Russell, all the famous atheistic philosophers point out very consistently. If there is no God, when we die, it's over, which means the only logical conclusion is despair. There's no hope for a bright future.
How can there be a logical conclusion that leads to an emotion? Those two generally don't go together. Or is it not an emotion? Is there something more complicated going on here?
Yeah, despair is more than an emotion.
Okay.
Despair is a rational understanding there is no future for me. It's ultimately meaningless. It's ultimately empty. There's a gaping void. Ernest Hemingway, the great American author, put it this way: life is just a dirty trick, a short journey from nothingness to nothingness. That's good, hard, honest thinking. That is despair.
But if you despair about your future, that doesn't mean you have to despair about your time in life.
That's right. You can perform an intellectual lobotomy and say, I'm not going to think about reality. I'm not going to think about the fact that when I die, I become fertilizer, nothing more. And I'm going to play a game. I'm going to play a game called creating hope out of nothing in my head. Creating meaning in life out of just a fantasy that I'm creating in my head.
Hope for tomorrow?
You can escape reality all you want. I think that's what atheists have to do. But that's why I respect the Camus and the Sartres and the Nietzsches. I respect the atheists who have the courage to grapple with the meaninglessness, the absurdity, the despair of their atheism. I respect that highly. It's called courage to face your beliefs. You believe something? Face it. Don't run away from it.
But I don't think you need to worry about how good you might be tomorrow if you can be good to people in the present. I mean, I don't see any reason to despair about your future if that means that you spend your time ignoring what you're doing in the current state. And if you spend your time ignoring what you're doing in the current state, then I think you're missing a larger point than what
Jesus Christ doesn't command anybody to ignore their present state. In fact, Jesus Christ says your present state is so important that it will determine where you spend eternity, either together with God or separate from God.
Then why are we
obviously
worrying about
Jesus
whether
is
or not
not
we
saying
become fertilizer
ignore
or any
your
of that?
present state.
If that's the case, then why are we worrying about any of this?
Because you have a date with death, so do we all. And the question is there life after death or is there not? And if you refuse to deal with that question, I would argue you've lost your intellectual honesty. You're not being honest with reality. Reality is the statistics on death are very impressive. 1 out of 1 die. 1 out of 1. Okay? It's not a fantasy. It's not a scare tactic. It's reality, folks. Now, I know that some of us here think that university students don't die. That's an illusion. University students grow old and die. So therefore, I think it would behoove all of us to consider our own mortality and to ask ourselves, is there a God who's interested in giving us life after death, or is there no God? And if there is no God, then I better struggle through the unyielding despair of a Bertrand Russell and figure out how I'm going to put my life together and why I'm putting it together the way I am.